This is the third video in the series, Cards in the My Religion is True game, the status card. This is my favorite card to talk about because it surprises some apologists to learn the motives behind the protests their brains cook up to hold on to what they believe. Out of all of them, this one is probably the least conscious response to an atheist's denial of God claims. In other words, apologists who rely on the status argument don't really know they're doing it. The status argument isn't so much an argument as it is a battle tactic. Some apologists subconsciously interpret a challenge to their God claims as a personal attack. Of course, God is something to which they've pledged their lives and loyalty, and the challenge feels provocative and confrontational. The natural human response to a challenge like that is to defend status in the group, whatever that might entail. The status card gets played in debates in a variety of ways, but they all represent the same strategy, and that is reestablishing their God's dominance in the face of a challenge. One of the most common is the God is above logic argument. God is above logic is a popular argument that may end the conversation, but in the debate about whether or not God is real, proves nothing. It ends the conversation because nothing can follow it. It's actually a childish form of posturing akin to, my dad is bigger than your dad, nanny, nanny, nanny. I'd like to clear up what logic is. Logic is not a moral code or a belief system. It's not a virtue or virtuous. It's not evil or a vice. It's not a deity. It's not a set of principles, a quasi-religion by which people live like they do on the planet Vulcan. Logic is a tool for determining whether something is true or effective. It's basically a screwdriver or an Allen wrench that we use in assembling arguments. So saying that an argument is false because God is above logic, or screwdrivers or Allen wrenches in this case, is essentially meaningless gobbledygook. I'll give you an example. Here's a logical argument. Evidence shows that educating children makes a society more likely to thrive. Therefore, making education available to all children, regardless of family income, will likely make our society thrive. We should provide a public form of education to all children so that our society thrives. That's an argument. The premise starts with a factual statement backed by evidence. The second sentence uses logical reasoning to extend the premise, and the conclusion, a call to action based on the reasoning. If you discover a case in which logic doesn't work, it doesn't mean that logic itself is faulty. It means some part of the conclusion or evidence of the logic is faulty. When it comes to making a rational determination, logic works without fail. As a weapon in a battle about what's true or effective, logic wins because that's logic's only job. And logic doesn't so much win as it confirms the truth of a statement. For logic, it's not a contest at all. It's only evidence and reasonable conclusions made from examining that evidence. When it comes to logic, the apologist flounders because throughout their entire lives, they've had their heads filled with faulty logic. They don't know what a logical argument sounds like because they've really never heard one. So instead, they trivialize logic, try to turn the debate into a primitive verbal tussle over who's got the bigger muscles or the bigger stick. Winning a fight is sometimes a matter of changing the weapons with which it's fought, and religious apologists know that. In a battle over who's correct, the devout are desperate to win, to defend their dad as best they can. They can't win against evidence and logic, so they call evidence and logic themselves into question. They declare that God is bigger than logic. This strategy, what I call the status card, will show in debates in many forms. For this video, I've gathered a few examples so that you know it when you see it. St. Paul himself was the first apologist to play the status card. In Romans chapter 9, he writes, God has mercy on whom he wants to have mercy, and he hardens whom he wants to harden. You'll say to me, then why does God still blame us? For who is able to resist his will? But who are you? a human being to talk back to God. Shall what is formed say to the one who formed it, why did you make me like this? Does not the potter have the right to make out of the same lump of clay some pottery for special purposes and some for common use? Who are you to talk back to God indeed? Well, yes, I'm a lowly, pitiful human being, but last I checked, human beings are capable of asking questions about things they're told they have to believe, such as God. Not surprisingly, the Quran does the same in Surah Al-Baqarah 230, where the angels question God's decision to create humanity. And mention, O Muhammad, when your Lord said to the angels, indeed, I will make upon the earth a successive authority, they said, will you place upon it one who causes corruption therein and sheds blood while we declare your praise and sanctify you? Allah said, indeed, I know that which you do not know. The God is above it all tactic is essentially the rationale that as an omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent being, God is above logic, science, philosophy, and all the subjects atheists like to talk about. So nothing they say could possibly disprove his existence or cast any doubt on his book, the Bible or the Quran or whatever it might be. The strategy is as old as religion itself and still shows in a variety of modern contexts. Some apologists will try the I love you man version. Ray Comfort does this. Watch his debates. You'll see lots of examples. If the debate is going badly for him, he will shift from the fact that he was clearly proven wrong and out of the blue declare his Christ-like love for his opponent. He'll announce, but I love you, man. I don't want you to go to hell. This strategy is not about love at all. It's actually designed to change the topic in a way that makes the atheist look like an asshole if he doesn't fall at Ray's feet thanking him for his great care and concern. But Ray still loses the debate. Some apologists will attack the integrity or scientific conclusions of the atheist. I've seen people do this with Richard Dawkins. They try to poke holes in his scientific conclusions. And yes, you will always find an obliging scientist to help you do that. No scientist's theories and conclusions are infallible, and Dawkins will be the first to admit that. This strategy is the apologist trying to turn the debate into a fight over who has the rightest guy or gal by finding mistakes that the atheist has made, no matter how trivial. The apologist thinks he has called everything that person says into question, including the claim that religion is nonsense. Some apologists are not devout themselves, but feel a burden to reestablish the preeminence of those who are because they think it's woke to do so. Ben Affleck, I'm talking to you. If you've never seen the debate during which Ben has a hissy fit all over Sam Harris, search it. Very entertaining and an excellent example of the status card being used in a debate about religion. The I know better tactic is another form of status jockeying under the status card. It puts the education and the experience of the people debating on two sides of a scale. If one outweighs the other, even tenuously, in relevance to the matter at hand, proximity to the topic, knowledge of scripture, number of years in the business of what's true and what's not, or in the number of advanced degrees and the relative prestige of the institution imparting those degrees, that person gets to decide who's right about God creating the universe. The ethnocentric, we are God-fearing people tactic is used by those who link their religious beliefs with a sense of ethnic superiority. For instance, if a young Muslim is taught from childhood to look down on non-Muslims as inferior and revolting because of their unbelief, then an idea such as equality for women is easier to reject as inferior and revolting. If a young American evangelical hears a preacher single out atheists, and perhaps immigrants from Muslim countries, then flamboyantly puff his chest and announce, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, that young American is more likely to associate their religion with the country they love and call home. It is easy to then convince that young American that atheism is treasonous. I am a Canadian atheist and a woman, and I'm sure if you want to, you'll find something you can argue is inferior and revolting. The she's just a shrieky bitch strategy falls under the status card. It might suit your needs in this case. The we are God-fearing people tactic works like gangbusters on religious types, but proves nothing about any religion being true. It's like everything else with the status card. It merely convinces dissenters not to ask questions or suggest any changes, lest they be lumped in with revolting inferiors. If all of these tactics fail, you can always attribute dissenting claims to the wiles of Satan, who is known to use all our higher learning and knowledge against us. For millennia, the Satan tactic has reliably kept people loyal and stupid for that reason, to lure us away from God and the path of righteousness. Satan allegedly seduces people, dazzles us with big words and fancy scientific concepts. The mere mention of Satan makes defenders protective and penitent, effectively disabling their powers of reason and suppressing any appetite they once had for learning. The last thing that devout want is to have helped Satan do his evil work, and the insinuation is enough to compel them to close all the books. Using the Satan tactic will probably make your bad feelings go away, but it will also keep you in a state of staggering ignorance. You might be as dumb as a box of rocks, but at least you'll have avoided helping the Prince of Darkness do his highfalutin science-y dirty work. After the Satan tactic comes the might is might tactic. Some of the devout, including those who engage in debate, when they feel threatened, threaten right back. This is status jockeying at its finest. The might is might people maintain that whoever's left standing at the end of a disagreement is the one who's correct. They forget what century we're living in and put a price on that person's head. Dispatch eager adherents, nothing to lose, to set them straight with some homemade explosives or a drive-by shooting. Problem solved. They might even stare down at the dead body and ask, who's right now? The next card in the My Religion is True game is the confusion card. Thanks for joining me.